We're about to get started here for the evening of reading and dancing. I'd like to give everybody an opportunity, if you have a cell phone with you, make sure that that's turned off. My name's Joe Vandenhoven. I'm Kathryn's nephew, and I'm also a funeral director, and I can tell you, if you don't turn your cell phone off and you get one phone call per month, it is going to happen in the next half hour. So thank you all for being here. Of course, I've known Kathryn all of my life. She was always on Kathy to me. It wasn't until her writing really took off that she turned into Kathryn Gahl. I tease her about that all the time. We come from a very large and interesting family. And you know, there were a couple stories that we had talked about leading into tonight, but she holds a very special place in my heart. Our family has been through a lot together, and we all have different strengths and different qualities that make us a successful family. But one of them is the fact that she is patient, and she can handle, you know, a lot of things. That's my Uncle John right there. He's trying to turn it down. But holidays, of course, a big family, a lot of activity, and when my dad was making a Christmas dinner or a Thanksgiving dinner, the best thing you could do was get out of his way. But like me, my dad didn't have a lot of patience, and the only person allowed in that kitchen to help was Kathryn, because she had the proper patience to make gravy. So we've all got our different gifts, but a couple years ago, for my 30th birthday, I had asked her to read some of her poetry at my birthday party. It was kind of like an open mic night or like a cabaret of all my different friends. But I have one of her poems tattooed on my left side here, and I thought, you know, maybe you could read that poem and a couple others. And I was not prepared for it to turn into a poetry roast. So she had a great time. I probably had 100 some friends there who were not signed up for poetry. They were there for live music and all this, and you could have heard a pin drop by the time that she was done. So I have always appreciated her ability to command a room like that. But the reason you're all here for the book, The Yellow Toothbrush, this is kind of the second part of a two-part story of tragedy in our family. And as I mentioned, I'm a funeral director. I am formally trained in grief resolution, in working through these sorts of things. And Kathryn didn't know it, and she's not formally trained, but she has now literally written the book on how to survive something like this. And when I first got into my profession, my mother had asked me, like, how can you do this? Why are you doing this? You know, it just seems so heavy. And I've said to my mom that everybody goes through something like this at some point, and it's better to have a friend there to help you than a stranger. And just like with our bodies, if you do enough things that are heavy, you grow strong. And that's something that I think Kathryn has found about herself. She had no idea how strong she really was. So the tattoo that I have on my left side is from the book that she released earlier, The Velocity of Love. And tonight we get to hear the beginning of The Yellow Toothbrush. So thank you all for being here. And if you could please give me a round of applause, or give her a round of applause. Give me a round of applause for Kathryn. Thank you. Or as I would call her, my Aunt Kathryn.
Well, after that, I'm already a wreck. So thank all of you for coming. I thought I would start by telling you that I had no idea I was writing a memoir when words burst out of me. Raw phrases, bad emotion, blood-stained emotion. I was simply doing what I had done for decades, put art to work when life got tough. My son's basketball coach would say, "Quick feet, make an adjustment." Yet here was an adjustment more critical than blocking a shot or stealing the ball. I was in the game of life without a playbook. As a nurse and writer, I knew about the workings of the mind, how better writing comes from the subconscious. I don't know what I will write until I write it. But the best writing comes from the unconscious, the unknown, the fears that affect us all, the dark shadows. Carl Jung says that those shadows include sadness, laziness, cruelty, and rage. Great. How could my unconscious write about the unconscionable, a calamity that landed my daughter in prison? Nonetheless, after every visit to her, I was driven to write, to discharge, to process. Here's an excerpt from the Yellow Toothbrush, interpreted by Lisa Pritzel of Empowerment Dance. Lisa utilizes the universal language of dance to tell story and improve cognition. She graciously agreed to appear with me and show how movement can open neural pathways in the body and mind. I ask you to imagine yourself moving with her. The day after I visit my daughter in prison, temperatures top out in the high 50s. Gray smears the sky. I dare to imagine the view from her room. A window in her door reflects flickering fluorescent from spidery ceiling fixtures. A different window with a limited view of the grounds is 5 inches wide and 50 inches long. A slit. It lets in a sliver of sun on a good day. She worked night shift for 7 years. A tall and bright RN. The one in the nursery who greeted every newborn with, "Happy birthday." She may not see the landscape moon for 24 years. By then, her night vision will cloud over with age. Mine will have joined the clouds. When memories like that would flood me, how could I write? I had to get out of the way, smash my ego looking for shame or blame, and shatter the real bugaboo, my rational mind looking for a reason. Because with mental illness, there is not a reason. There are 1,000 reasons. Maybe a galaxy of reasons, randomly lining up to explode. Could I retrace the explosion? Explain it? Would it matter? Compelled, I wrote snippets with no goal except to see in the dark. And so I wrote, sometimes badly, honestly, mostly badly. But always rapidly, because I never knew when I would be struck by stark pain. like at the YMCA. As I'm walking fast, past preschoolers in pink tutus, past daddies bouncing boys on their knees, past grandmas waiting for class, I keep my head down. I want to fight. I am jealous, as I so often am, if by accident I spot a mother breastfeeding, fixated on her newborn. In FOSS, the nurse in the birthing center would have noted, face-to-face, direct eye contact. A clue that a miracle of math was born and bonded, superglued to the mother after the cord cut, because fetal cells will circulate in the mother's blood for years. I am you, and you are me, running in time, and the power of touch when serving time, as mothers, fathers, grandmothers, grandfathers watch kin twinkle off with the YMCA instructor, set foot on the gym floor, dance floor, pool edge. And I long to sit with them, spy, be alive, and stop counting on my fingers, ankles, toes, and nose. How many gods will it take to guard those little ones through risk and choice? Invisible, the promise of chance. Neck bones of something called courage. One of the challenges in storytelling is to manage time. You can use it effectively for forward motion, build tension. How could I manage time twisting through 3 generations? Mary Karr, author of The Art of Memoir, offers a suggestion. The heart is the brain. You know that thing about follow your heart? Well, my heart was broken, and my brain was mush. In that muddied state, I stopped seeking how to shape time or anything else, because I did not know that I was writing something big, say, a book. I was only spilling my guts on the page, writing about worlds heretofore unknown to me. Filicide, failed suicide, the Milwaukee County Jail, sudden uprootedness, criminal injustice, to Cheetah Prison. I scratched on yellow pads, napkins, tear-stained greeting cards, and as I did, emotions surfaced. Like this excerpt, for example. One of those days after visiting, does it matter which? It hits me. Kerpow! I can't keep the lid on anger. Here I thought it had simmered down, yet it roils back, much like her anxiety. Nightmares, trapped tears, and therapies over the years with her insisting, nothing works. It's not helping. No one is on my side. There are many sides to this story. Some diving, some skidding sideways. each shot full of fear. I am learning on this pilgrimage that fear inflates anger. As someone who loves to cook, I dumped anger in a metaphorical pot, intending to boil it. You know that saying, boiling mad. However, when I began to boil, I was not full of fear. I was not afraid. I was sick and tired and exhausted. Exhaustion, moral exhaustion. It sucked at my entire being, wrists, ball and socket hips, hinged joints coming unhinged. The most dramatic were in my legs, calves in spasm, stone-like knots, recurring for months, despite a gifted manual therapist, twice a week, softening one knot at a time. Finally, I asked him, "What is going on with my legs?" "You are struggling to walk into the future," he said. It was so obvious, but I needed him to enunciate it. Legs carry us forward in life, he added. Life is for you. It is? It was? A life of grief and disbelief? After a year of volleying with words, I had a mess. So I took a memoir class, hoping to organize it somehow. I completed class assignments on shape, structure, pacing. None of it worked. And so I decided to forgo a finished piece. The drama was too big and too intricate. It had no clear beginning, middle, and end. And then I recalled the basic tenet from Frank Conroy in his fiction intensive class. Strive to write with meaning, sense, and clarity. It's not that easy. Meaning, sense, and clarity. It was that simple and that complex. So I wrote overwhelmingness and willingness. Overwhelmingness and willingness. It came then to a day of simplicity. This, why you should not talk to me, because I cannot listen, nor can I explain things one more time. Do not fret. There is much to be done about sinkholes, volcanic ash, bitterness. If you don't know what they are, I am sorry. I cannot stop in this mush of truth and deceptions to mention them. Some things, my very hungry caterpillar, you must be willing to unravel yourself until you come upon the moment, a metamorphosis, when you realize you can go on, crawling at first, then lifting your head in pounding waves of humanity, opening your wings in harsh wind to achieve lift. See the long view. Well, I tried on different forms. Nothing quite fit. Whether prose, hybrid, narrative poems, cross-genre, vignettes, prose poems, epics, linked stories, or elegies. That's a lot of writerly talk, but that's what we try to do. But none of them worked. No shapes worked either. Not chronological, time travel, the hero's journey, or admixtures of circumspection and candor. I felt frayed, very vulnerable. I knew I could not know what I did not know. So I gave up. And that's how a new form emerged, nameless, with brush strokes of calm and chaos. Call it touched by the angels or the feminine divine. A mystical aura came over me, tapping the source of creativity. It was the silence of a human soul, wanting only to be heard. And I listened. And as I did, someone else showed up. Someone classy and confident. A magnetic personality, ready to go to work. Me. Hugging me with quiet reassurance. She whispered, "Don't touch the mic." Hugging me with quiet reassurance, she whispered, "There's another way to be in the world." I asked her name. Empathy. Empathy. Empathy.
Thank you. And thank you, Kathryn, for allowing me to be part of, I don't even can't find the words to put behind being able to support you today. I know how hard this has been. So what we would like to do is, if you're anything like me, this left you wondering. Maybe there's some gaps that you have to fill in to help you complete the story for yourself. And quite often there's a lack of conversation revolving hard things like this. Mental health, we hear more and more about the importance of that and addressing that. So what we would like to do this evening is open up the floor. What questions do you have that are boiling in your mind right now, that are trying to bubble up to complete your story so that you can help her continue this journey of healing? So we're going to leave that open now for you guys.
Amy has a mic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. She did it. Sometimes when I've been on a Story Catchers stage talking about this, and I was surprised in the beginning, but I'm no longer surprised that everybody has a story. I ended up the other day telling some guy about it, and all of a sudden he told me about all the visits that he made to jail to his lover. And I don't think he'd ever told anybody that. So there was nothing that doesn't exist I've never been interested in writing horror. I don't read horror, but now I know why that's such a big genre, because it does go into the shadows. And I lived in the shadows without expecting to. So please, who wants to speak up or speak down or speak sideways?
So just to back up a little bit, I know the Velocity of Love you wrote in 3 parts, where it was anticipation, realization, and lamentation, maybe? Do you want to just talk about, maybe in, I say this lovingly, less poetic terms, how the book is structured, or how these poems
Which
came
book?
about?
This book or the other book?
Well, maybe both.
The Velocity of Love is devoted to my grandson, and the woman whose blurb is on the front of the Yellow Toothbrush is Sarah Sadie. She was the poet laureate of Madison at the time in 2016, when I had what I thought was a draft of this, but it was, as I say, a mess. And I asked her to read it, and she gave me wonderful feedback, and then I kept struggling forward, like that's in between lying on my living room floor and crying, right? When she reviewed what is now the Yellow Toothbrush, which, by the way, had 70 titles, and I can thank my awesome publishers for coming up with the Yellow Toothbrush, a memoir of trauma and mercy. Thank you, Steph. Sarah Sadie, who is on the front cover, said to me, "Where's the baby? What you've written, where's the baby?" And I realized that my pain was so deep. They say denial works until it doesn't. I hadn't written about that. Well, so the Velocity of Love, which won an Outstanding Achievement Award from the Wisconsin Library Association, is in 3 parts, like Joe said. Anticipation, realization, and lamentation. The anticipation part, I was writing to this child in utero. And realization is when the child is here. And so between those 2 sections, I had like 250 poems. And so then I wrote lamentation and put it into a 3-act play, if you will. So that's where that came from. This that you have in front of you, it really is genre defining. Yes, it's poetic language. What is poetry? It puts compression on the language. I'm neurotic about the right word in the right place at the right time, all that sort of thing. Kind of like songwriters. I mean, that's what lyrics are. But if you've played the game Tetris, I had all these things, and I just started, I had it on the floor, like, well, would that make sense? They call that pacing, right? You're telling a story. Would that make sense to tell that part there? No, that's too early. You can't do that. Anyway, that's how it turned out. Did I answer your question? I know that some of the people who have blurbed the book are in the audience, and I thank them for showing up. There were 27 people who read the manuscript and wrote something about it. So thank you for writing that, and thank you for coming.
I want to know if you had any revelations in your dreams or in the shower to help you make order of this mess.
No. She asked if I had any revelations in the shower. No. Actually, when it got put together, then I could see there was a missing part. So then I would write something else. Or, literally stand on the floor and make a circle like this of all the parts and start moving them around. That's an old thing for writing novels or even short stories. So, no, the way that my brain works is it's always thinking in words and images, So I didn't really think about the order of it. And Two Shrews was brilliant to create chapters, if you will. Really early on, I think there were only 40 entries, and it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm like, well, that's dumb. That's boring. So then I ended up putting names to the stuff. So that's a good question, Elaine, thanks.
So the reason came not inspiration and dreams, but in
But-
order in the end instead of order in the beginning.
Say that again? Can you give her the mic? She is an old English teacher. Oh, former.
She's not old.
No. I caught myself.
I am not a good creative writer because order is always first for me. So I always have these crazy questions about order. I don't know how you can write well without thinking of order first. And I know that Kathy writes meaning and emotion and feeling and worth first and then orders later. So I keep looking for this answer and I'm realizing there is no single answer. But apparently laying things out on the floor works really well.
Well, so I remember even in high school, they told you to write an outline and then write the essay. Couldn't do it. I would write it and then I would look back at it and then I would write the outline.
It does work for both ways. I
It
get
works
that.
both ways.
But I still think there's a magic answer somewhere in your dreams. That's
Well,
why
you're
I
thinking
asked
there
you.
is one answer.
I know.
No, there's a whole bunch of them. Yeah. There's somebody over there.
Hi, Kathryn. Could you speak to, and maybe looking back, what was it that got you up off the floor, that moved your arm to actually write in such a devastating and anger and fear and sadness? What inspired you? What lifted you up? Do you have any name for that?
I've never been asked that. That's a brilliant question. It makes my heart hurt to even hear that. But I know that the way that I'm made, I am a ball of emotion. And so by feeling something really deep, you know, like there's that trite saying, the only way out is through. Because mostly when there's all this pain and all these people killing one another and madness in society, it's because anger is an easier emotion to go to than fear. And I learned so much in this. So by, I don't even say not being afraid to feel, it's just the way that I'm made. You know, like my mother would say, oh, you're so dramatic. I'm like, yeah. And apparently that was, right, that was a bad thing to her, but it was me. You know, I wanted to be a newscaster. I wanted to be on stage. I was just a ball of emotion. And so that's probably how, you know, lying on the floor when you're completely obtunded and you're completely out of it, I found the key. And then I got up at my little table and I always wrote in longhand. I had junk all over the place. I wrote in the car. I wrote everywhere. People would say, oh, listen to this podcaster. Turn on that music. I'm like, no, I got to listen to my brain. I'm not going to listen to anything else because it was competing. I have writer friends who can only write when they're listening to music. Again, right? We're all made differently. Thank you for that. There's somebody over in the corner here.
Got one here. We'll go there next.
Hi, Kathryn. It's Jenny. How do you write memoir that's yours but also contains other stories? How do you not get in your head about telling your own story and worrying about how it's going to impact others?
Well, I hear two things in your question. One is, whose story was it?
Right.
When I started writing this, I didn't know whose story it was. Was it mine, my son, my daughter, my deceased husband, society? Whose was it? And the second, and I figured out, oh, it's my story. I'm writing it, and we don't live alone. We're connected with all these people. So I had to be respectful of the other players if you will, to make sure that, I mean, enough people have read it that they have said, there's no blame placed. I mean, I had it in a class one time and the instructor said, the only one taking the blame here is the universe, but all this could have lined up. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
The galleys here. Hi. So amazing to see how the dance went with this book, which I have read, and then seeing the dance go with it really brought it to an emotional life that I hadn't felt the first time I read it. And so I'm so curious how, because you kind of quickly went with the red scarf, which was so perfectly symbolic, and that gave the dance that gave you confidence. But how did that really work? How did you come to dance, and then how did the dance help transform you?
You mean in my life or
Yes,
in
yes.
this? Well, twofold. So in my life, I didn't know, I mean, I was on my 6th therapist. And when she met me, she's like, you have a spark in your eye. I had people in here whose children have been murdered, and they are anhedonic. That means no emotion, completely flat. And I said, well, you know, I feel kind of guilty, but I've been a ballroom dancer for 18 years, and I'm dancing. I gotta dance. Well, you may or may not be familiar with the book, The Body Keeps the Score, which was written by Bessel van der Kolk, and he talks about our emotions are in our body. So crying on the floor got me in touch with that. Dancing kept me alive, and that 6th therapist said, you better keep dancing or you're just gonna collapse. And so you'll read about that in the book, that it was dancing that brought me into myself. So in terms of Lisa Pritzel, I've had 4 books come out this year. One of them is called Messengers of the Gods, and it's all about dancing, because Martha Graham called dancers messengers of the gods. Lisa Pritzel, who has a dance company, and she's also certified in PD, Parkinson's dance. She helps people with Parkinson's find their movement, because movement, even if you're in a wheelchair, is where neuropeptides are stored in the body. They're little computer chips in our bodies. So she took parts of Messengers of the Gods and had her clients dancing to it. And then I'm thinking about, how am I going to stand up and talk about, oh, whoa, the yellow toothbrush, and how am I going to do that? And like, Lisa Pritzel. Right? And so what did I give you? And because we are both dancers, I mean, dance is a universal language to move. So that's why you're here, and that's why I'm here. And I'm just so really overwhelmed. Thank you.
You mentioned briefly in one of the excerpts criminal injustice. And I've talked with Beth and Steph about how what's happened to your family in Wisconsin wouldn't necessarily happen if you had raised your family somewhere else. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I can. What she's alluding to is, if this had happened in 22 other countries, including Canada, or if it had happened in Illinois or Massachusetts, it would have been recognized as a public health crisis, as a severe mental illness. It would not have been criminalized. My daughter would not be in prison. She would be in a mental health facility. being treated like a normal human being without captains and sergeants and lieutenants and all these rules. I mean, prisons are based on the military model. I don't know if you remember from years ago, Andrea Yates, who took the life of 5 of her children. Her lawyer fought and fought and fought for her until she is no longer in a prison. She is in a care facility, but she can wear normal clothes. She can eat protein. My daughter doesn't get any protein. She can go outside where there's fresh air. She can be active, right? Movement. I mean, many years ago, the women at Tachita had dances. Now that's considered the new word for me, twerking. Can't touch anybody else. Because why? Like, touch is important. But anyway, so, you know, the goal would be, I don't know, in my lifetime, to change the law and to recognize that what is now known as PMAD, perinatal mood and anxiety disorder, is a disorder. It is not a crime. And my daughter was sentenced for 25 years because she lost her mind. I can't see you unless I go, which maybe is a good thing. There's somebody back there.
Well, it's actually not a question, but Postpartum Support International is where George Parnham and his wife do their advocacy work. So if people are interested in changing the laws, and ultimately the goal is to change it nationally, but for right now it is being done state by state, that would be the place to go to start if people are interested. The umbrella term that Kathryn was talking about, perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, include depression and anxiety during pregnancy, postpartum, depression after adoption, postpartum OCD, postpartum psychosis, postpartum onset bipolar disorder, postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression, and it is common, it is treatable, but we don't talk about it because nobody likes to talk about mental illness. And like Kathryn, I was also dramatic, and I met Kathryn telling my story about postpartum anxiety and depression, and now I volunteer for that organization and talk to parents.
And who are you?
I'm Jenny Gaskell. I'm a member of Postpartum Support International. I'm a volunteer, and I'm also part of the Wisconsin chapter. So I have cars. We recently just passed a maternal mental health hotline that is now staffed 24/7, 365 days a year. That's an 800 number that any new parent can call any time of day, and they're licensed clinicians. And what breaks my heart is thinking that had that been available, would we have been able to help Nora and able to get her the help she needed? So that's why I keep doing what I do.
Thank you, Jenny.
Me again.
Who are you?
Eliza.
Hi, Eliza.
I just wanted to say thank you to Jenny, and we should touch base. I'm a professional advocate. I lobby politicians on behalf of women for a living.
What?
Yeah, we should
Hello.
we should get coffee. And I also just wanted to do my part to destigmatize this issue a little. Elizabeth and I first became friends because we met while I was pregnant. My daughter is about to turn 3, and she was one of the people who I said, like, I hate this. This sucks. I hate my body. I hate everyone around me. And she's like, yeah, that's pregnancy, babe. And she was one of the first people who gave me permission to not be happy about my pregnancy. I had severe perinatal depression. For those in the know, I scored 22 on the Edinburgh score. When I told that to a nurse, she said, "Oh golly, let's get you some help." There was none available. There is nothing between a yoga retreat and being in Bellin for pregnant women in Wisconsin. There is nothing. I was in therapy. I had a wonderful OB who understood it. We ended up getting me induced early because she's like, "Let's make you not pregnant. Let's get this out of you." And then when I was done pushing, my daughter was out. Dr. Amy grabbed my knee and said, "You've done it. You never have to do that again. Here's your baby." And I say my depression left with the placenta. I fell in love with my baby and all was well, and everyone kind of breathed a sigh of relief because I really felt from the offset that, and I really got this, from medical professionals, even the receptionist at the doctor's office, I ceased to be a person. And I would go in and, they would tell me that, good news, the fetus is doing great. I'd be like, okay, I'm not doing well. And it was this exhausting advocacy to really just assert my humanity. I found it so dehumanizing. And I think even for people who have that self-awareness and are safe enough in their own mind and in their own home to stand up and say, I need help, what happens next, it can really be life-threatening. So thank you, Kathryn.
Thank you.
How did you choose the title, and what is its significance?
I didn't choose the title, my publishers did. And as they used to say on Reading Rainbow, which my kids watched when they were little, if you want to know the answer to that, you have to read the book. That wasn't a plant, that was really good. I'm going to be up here on stage signing books for anyone interested. Again, there's so many people that I have to thank that we would be here for another 45 minutes if I said that to everyone. But thank all of you for coming. Thank my blurbists, thank my publishers, thank my dancer, thank the person who really ultimately got here, and that is Amy from Lion's Mouth Bookstore, because she told me about these shoes. You thought you were going to get out of it, huh? No, you're not going to get out of it. So thank you again. No.